Janus Jaguar, and this is Janus Jaguar Yammers AfterThoughts. This is the future Janus who pops in from here and now, and I just have some thoughts that I wanted to get in here. In the previous episode was regarding a Am I the Bunghole post about a man asking if they were transphobic for breaking up with their female to male boyfriend because the OP is not gay. Obviously, the OP is not the bung. I think that is quite obvious, especially how they worded everything. Said they said they were he. They respected their new identity. Brought up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the one thing about those needs is it's actually not just needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is actually motivations and needs. And so we're actually going to start off this conversation with the self and identity. So we're going to ask the question, who am I? I believe I am Janus Jaguar and Janus Jaguar, and in this episode of Janus Jaguar Yammers, we are going to get into this. First and foremost, we are going to look at some definitions because that's what actually all that matters at the end of the day with the self and identity and everything is it's just definitions. And I found this was a great article for what is the self and identity, and it's a abstract written titled Self and Identity, a brief overview of what they are, what they do, and how they work. The human self exists at the interface between the animal body and the social system. Solitary beings would hardly need or have cells, but social and cultural systems define identities, and the human animal acquires selfhood in order to function in these systems. Self begins with the physical body, with acting and choosing as a unity, and as a point of reference distinct from others, and it requires meaningful content by participating in social systems. The self is not contained in the brain, but rather the human brain learns to operate a self. So what at least the way that I kind of see this is like, it's the operating system and is the self, and the GUI, or the GUI, the graphical user interface, is the identity. You know, it looks like Windows, it looks like Mac, but at the end of the day, another way to imagine this, past Janus, throw up the cube up there, is to imagine a cube. As you can see this cube on the screen, it has many sides, but it has an inside volume and an outside side, so to speak. As you can see, it's a 3D space, with the self being the volume of the cube, and then your identity being the faces of the cube. And so the next step I want to talk to, so the next after the next thought I want to bring in here is the limits to the self and identity. And what by limits I mean constraints. And by constraints I mean what can limit the developments. So for example, the main one I want to focus on is knowledge. Now the thing is people disagree about what knowledge is, but in this case we're just going to go with beliefs is what knowledge is in this idea, because I want to bring up the idea of cultures and subcultures being a direct influence with identity and self. We clearly see this day to day with identity, but we never bring up the self aspect of it. And specifically, what I'm getting into is these subcultures feed into ideas of knowledge that particularly identify what the self is and what the identity is because of the language use and the definitions and the importance in those particular cultures and subcultures towards certain concepts. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because in the previous video, Janus brought up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Janus, bring up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, please. Assuming Janus did his job right, before you is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's what it's known about. It is also known, and which should be properly told, is it's the hierarchy of needs and motivations, because these are exactly what these are. These are things that motivate us, and these are our hierarchy of needs. It's just shorthand in a sense to use it as the needs, because yeah, and let's just go a quick definition of what this pyramid is. Many of you have probably seen this before, especially those who've had a psych class. You are probably not familiar with the top one right here, but you will be, you probably are familiar with it if you have a proper understanding of self-actualization. So we're going to start from the bottom. And there's a reason why it is a pyramid, though all these needs are all at once. The important part is they fluctuate based on various aspects, which can be real or imagined. So these are really just set up in the importance. That's why it's considered the hierarchy of needs. Like, for example, physiological needs, food, water, shelter, warmth. Also, these are the needs of and motivations of seeking to obtain basic necessities of life. So clearly these things are more important, for example, than your safety needs, because it doesn't matter if you have any feelings of security and stability if you can't have a warm meal in the first place, or even a cold meal, or that deer you just hunted in the middle of the woods, type of situation. It doesn't matter if you're safe or not if you can't eat the deer, or you can't drink from that stream. It doesn't matter if you're safe or not. And which brings us, as I said, security, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's about, we see it nowadays, about law and order. And in this case, we can think of it as our feelings of security and stability. Today, compared to the 80s, is a dream. People do not understand. And then becomes our next step is our belonging and love needs. Now, this is our sense of community, family, romance, friends, our social status. These are those things. Like the social hierarchy. That's where these start to come into play. And then we have our self-esteem, accomplishments, and our mastery of things. So this is our needs of esteem through recognition or achievement. What we are, our actual expenditures of our capabilities, which brings us to self-actualization, which is one's fullest potential, or rather seeking to fulfill one's personal potential. What are you capable of? And that's where most people who've been in psychology have ended it, but there's actually another step that Maslow has developed. Before his death, it just wasn't fully released. He unfortunately died of a heart attack, complications of one, before he could release and talk about it publicly, but he had it written down years before he has passed. And that is self-transcendence. If you've read about self-actualization, some parts of self-actualization is about doing things that are related to altruism. And that's exactly the good thing to think about self-transcendence. It is orienting goals and motivations beyond the self, or you seek to further the cause beyond the self and to experience a communion beyond the boundaries of the self through peak experience. Janus, throw this little thing that I'm reading up on the screen because I want them to read the bottom part with me. So, as you can see on the screen, that there is a little A and a little B in the self-transcendence. Let's read with these little A's and B's. So the first A is seeks to further a cause beyond the self. What does that mean? It means this may involve a service to others, devotion to an ideal, i.e. a truth or an art, or a cause, so like social justice, environmentalism, the pursuit of science, a religious faith, and or a desire to be united with what is perceived as transient or divine. That's what is the cause, the seek further, a cause beyond the self. And now we have B, which is about the self through peak experience. And B means this may involve mystical experiences and certain experiences with nature, aesthetic experiences, actual experiences, and other interpersonal experiences in which the person experiences a sense of identity that transcends or extends beyond the personal self. Now, this is what I could see as, remember I was talking about that cube. So you have the self, which is the volume of the cube, and then you have identity, which is the facade of the cube. Your identity is who you are, but it's not who you are. And the reason why I want to bring this afterthought in is because we all do not have the same needs. While we do have necessarily this pyramid of needs, we don't have the same desires. So, for example, currently in the United States, men are in neurotic state, that is an emotionally unstable state. A lot of them are friendless, they're aimless, they're romanceless. They have a missing of community, family, and romance. They have a big missing of love and belonging, which is bleeding into their self-esteem of their abilities to accomplish anything and even have a mastery of everything, potentially. Part of this is even they're dropping out of the work force, but at the same time, a lot of them aren't able to get a proper education. A lot of them are not able to get into college, and if they do, a lot of them aren't graduating. And obviously that is going to not only change their motivations and needs, they're going to obviously have a harder time, even if they do have a seeking of a need for self-actualization and transcendence, that is, altruism and being one's full potential. It's going to be harder to focus on that if they're having a hard time, as if they're in need of love and belonging, which a lot of them are indeed in need of love and belonging and a community and social needs. And on the flip side, past Janus here, I just wanted to quick insert that I forgot to add. Men in the United States are also lacking in safety because they are becoming rather self-destructive. In fact, in a 24-hour span, 108 men successfully lose any, let's just say a need for this hierarchy of needs, or motivation for that matter, because they don't have, Speaking of safety, in the same country, a lot of the women have issues with safety. However, unlike the men, a lot of women do have a sense of community, family, and belonging. And as things are changing between generations, the millennials, especially Gen Z, is catching up in literal accomplishments. Obviously, there's still a lot of way to go. Come on, Alpha, you got this. Gen Beta. Speaking of Gen Beta, do Alpha males plan on having Beta babies? Anyway, potentially into the future, we should consider what else affects these needs and motivations? What tertiary forces could disrupt one's love and belonging? Or what tertiary influences can affect the safety of certain groups, certain identities? What tertiary ideas can limit identity and the self out there? These are just things we should consider. And those are just my afterthoughts, and if you have any questions, and if you have any topics you would like Janus and I, myself, Janus, to cover, please let us know, and we will totally cover them. Because at the end of the day, all that really matters is, who are you? The question is, does the self matter, or does your identity matter more? Doot doot doot.